Okay, so we are kind of working backwards, starting with some equation and identifying the slope, identifying that it is rise over run, and maybe written in a different way, the change in y over our change in x. Okay, so we are going to be given a slope, or we'll have to find the slope, as well as finding the y-intercept. Finding the y-intercept. And we're going to have to write our own equations now. So before we were given an equation, we found the slope and the intercept. Now we're going to be given the slope and the intercept, and we're going to write the equation. Now, please make sure your y-intercepts are written as an ordered pair. When x is 0, your y-intercept, whatever that may be, will proceed. So I wrote 0, comma b. That is where your graph crosses the y-axis. Now, looking here, we've got y equals mx plus b. We can clearly see that m is 4. Okay, those line up very nicely. So I'm going to write m as 4. Or we could say 4 over 1, just so we know that we would rise 4 and actually run 1. And then what about the y-intercept? Ooh, okay, so I'm not really adding anything. So what would our y-intercept be? The number value for nothing is 0, but we want to write it as a point. So we are going to be writing 0, comma 0 as that y-intercept. Now, when it's written as f of x equals 4x, does that make it any different? Well, f of x is really just y. Therefore, it's the same exact thing as y equals 4x. So, it does not change the equation. It is just written as y equals 4x, and then in function notation, f of x equals 4x. Okay, so now we are given that the slope is 3, so I'm going to say m equals 3, just because that slope-intercept form does deal with the variables, and I'm going to say that my b equals 7, because my y-intercept is at 0, comma 7. So, I'm going to take 3, plug it in for m. I'm going to take 7 and plug it in for b. My final equation is y equals 3x plus 7. Boom. Same thing over here. M is negative 1/4. B is negative 2. And I'm going to plug that into y equals mx plus b. So y is equal to negative 1/4 x plus negative 2. However, we can simplify that and write it more efficiently. Y equals negative 1/4 x minus 2. Okay, both are correct. One is more properly written. So now we have to write the equation of a graph. We are going to find some pretty points. And I'm going to count down 3 and to the right 5. So down 3, to the right 5. And since I went down, I'm going to have a negative 3. Okay, down is a negative direction. So my slope will be negative 3 over 5. We're going to look where that y-intercept crosses at the y-axis. That is at 0, comma 0. Therefore, we know that b is equal to 0. And we're going to write the equation y equals negative 3/5 x plus 0. Ooh. Next up, slope of this next guy. Find your pretty points. We count up 1, 2, 3, 4 over to the right 1. That is a positive. In both directions, we're going to have a positive slope of 4 over 1, or just 4, however you would like to write it. Looky there, it crosses the y-axis at 0, comma 4. So that means our y-intercept will be at b equals 4 or at 0, 4. In our equation, y equals 4x plus 4. Boom. Next guy, the slope here. We see that from pretty point to pretty point, we count down 1 and to the right 1. So that means down would be -1, right would be +1. Down is a negative direction, so we're going to make sure we give it a negative value. And we're going to say that the slope is m equals negative rise 1, run 1, or just -1. And we can see that the graph crosses the y-axis at -5. So b is equal to -5. We write that as a point at 0, -5. Final equation, y equals -1x plus -5. Let's write this a little more properly, a little more neat and tidy. Y equals -x minus 5. Cool? Okay, now we are rearranging to get this into the form y equals mx plus b. We are going to leave y where it is, and we are going to move everything else to the other side, okay? So y stays put. I've got a positive 2x, so I'm going to do the opposite and have a negative 2x. Cancels those guys out. I have y equals 7 minus 2x. Now, let's write this in y equals mx plus b form, okay? So our slope is -2. That y-intercept is 7. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals -2x plus 7, okay? The top equation is perfect, but let's write it in the form y equals mx plus b. Next up, 3y, leave it there. Don't touch it yet. All right, there's much more important things to take care of, like subtracting the 5x from both sides. We've got 3y equals 3 minus 5x. Let me pause this real quick. Please make sure we are not combining the 3 and the 5. 3 is a number, okay? -5x is a variable, all right? You do not combine numbers with variables. Next up, I've got 3y equals 3 minus 5x. To get y by itself, finally, okay, it should not be our first move to divide, okay? There's always going to be a weaker operation like addition or subtraction to do first, okay? Keep that in mind. We divide by 3 on both sides. 3's cancel out. I get y equals. Now, let's think about it this way. Let's take our two numbers, all right? 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, all right? They're being divided, so let's write 3 over 3. Minus, we've got -5 on the top and 3 on the bottom. So let's write -5 over 3x. All right, which one of those can we reduce? Y equals, 1 minus 5/3 x. I want to write this in the form y equals mx plus b, so I'm moving my -5/3 x to the front and adding on my intercept of 1 to the end. Bada bing, bada boom, donezo. Once again, my -2y stays. Don't touch it yet. E's okay right there for now. I'm going to subtract x instead. I've got -2y equals -4 minus x. I want y by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by -2. Now y is equal to, let's break it down, -4 over -2. We can write it that way. Plus negative, what's that number in front of x? -1 divided by -2. That's really a -1x. All right, now let's simplify. Y equals +2 plus +1/2 x. Let's put that coefficient and variable out front. Y equals mx plus b, y equals 1/2 x plus 2. Okay. Now, you all are going to do this practice on your own. Okay? I've given us some hints on how to do it. We've got m and b that we can identify from the graph. We find m from rise over run. We find b where the x is 0 and the line is crossing the y-axis. Once we find those, we just plug them into the equation y equals mx plus b. Done. Okay, you're going to do the same thing with this guy. Okay, now we're even told the slope and the intercept. All right, slope m, y-intercept b, plug those bad boys in. Bada bing, bada boom. We're going to do that for all of these next four. And now lastly, we are once again solving for y like we did in the last four on the practice portion. Okay, y stays, move everything else. All right, just like the negative 7y stays, you're going to move everything else to the other side, then get y by itself by performing an operation. Same thing occurs for 9. The 5y stays. You move everything else. Final operation and get y by itself. Negative 6y stays. You get y by itself. And there you have it. Goodbye.